Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Matt Jarbo. Welcome to Three Buck Theater, and Spider-Man Far From Home had its critical screenings the other day. I had caught wind from a friend of mine who saw it, who gave me the gist of just like, it was good. It was really freaking good. And then now we get the rest of them. We get to see what everyone else is saying about Spider-Man Far From Home. I thought it'd be fun to look at the what the critics are saying to give us an idea for when the movie comes out in a couple of weeks, whether or not it's going to effectively live up to Endgame, if it's going to be able to finish that kind of emotional roller coaster. Because I don't know about you, but like Endgame left me personally kind of not done with the MCU, not disillusioned with the MCU, but ready for a long break, ready for like a couple years of nothing, no talking about it, no mentioning it, no being involved in it, just walking away for a while, knowing that there was one more movie. So then the question becomes, can Spider-Man effectively wrap up Endgame, wrap up phase 3, and open the door to phase 4? That is the question of Spider-Man Far From Home. And here on Rotten Tomatoes, there's clearly no critical consensus, as there are no reviews. Everything's going to be coming in through Twitter. So I thought we would take a look to see whether or not those questions are answered and more. And without further ado, why don't we dive right in? So Matt Singer here says Spider-Man Far From Home had the difficult task of following two epic Avengers movies and Spider-Verse, and succeeds by telling a smaller, classical story about Peter Parker caught between what he wants and what responsibility demands. Pure cat spider nip for Spidey fans like me. Now, the funny thing, he mentioned Spider-Verse in there. The movie didn't really make a lot of money. It did win the Academy Award for Best Animated Picture. It is clearly worthy of the Best Animated Picture award, but it has nothing ultimately to do with this iteration of Peter Parker. It just has nothing to do with it. So I understand Screen Crush and everything else. I get it wanting to talk about that, but it's kind of wrong. But I just, again, I like it that it's more of a Peter Parker story. And I have friends that don't like it when it's Peter Parker. They just want pure Spider-Man, 120 minutes of Peter, of no Peter, just the mask. And if he takes off the mask, don't be in costume, because that's a gross thing. That's a terrible thing. I literally have one friend who said that. He knows who he is, and he's watching this right now. Seriously, you sound as ridiculous as I do. Anyway, Angie J. Han here says Spider-Man Far From Home is the coda we needed after Endgame, a glimpse of how the world now looks that the dust has settled. Could maybe have gone a bit harder on P's emotional arc and bursting with warmth and humor and awkward teen romance. Also, Jake G equals perfect casting. So what that basically says to me is that it's a nice chill thing after the end of Endgame, right? I think the best way to equate it is Game of Thrones. Not season 8, but like every other season, where you've got the penultimate episode, which is the big one, the big bad, the big crazy episode. And then the next episode is just kind of setting things up for what's to come. It's the cool down episode, which a lot of people out there didn't really like, because why would you have such an crazy, insane episode and then not make that the season finale to end on some type of massive cliffhanger? It was something new that that Game of Thrones creators tried, and it worked in many ways. And this could be one of those similar moments. At least that's what I get here from Angie Han. Jason Garacio says, I love that Spider-Man Far From Home is all sleight of hand. It begs to be seen multiple times. And of course, given the idea there of just who Mysterio is, of him being the special effects wizard and everything being a sleight of hand, this is a very, very punny tweet. Very good. Very good job, Jason. Very good job. Eric Davis here from Fandango says, Spider-Man Far From Home is a funny, exciting, romantic, goofy, and follows Homecoming in being this brilliant ground-level look at Spidey's world and how the events of Avengers Endgame impacted everyday life. Lots of twists and turns, plus some adorable summer romances too. I'm a big fan. And if I'm being fair, the summer romance thing, I get it, but is it wrong that I was kind of hoping that MJ would be dusted and we would get the actual Mary Jane Watson? Nothing against Zendaya's performance. I liked it well enough. She's a good character as Michelle, but she's not Mary Jane. And when they tried playing that little thing at the end of Homecoming, when I saw it in theaters at opening night, my whole audience groaned audibly because nobody liked the MJ aspect of it, which is one of the reasons why they haven't played it up in the 2 years since. In fact, they've been very low key on that to kind of make sure that you know that she's not the Mary Jane that we all know and love. And that could be, changed here possibly, especially with the summer romance part of it. But when it comes to, I mean, maybe this is just, my take on it, but Peter always has doomed romances, and maybe doing away with that right now gives us the opportunity to just let him love and then let him lose, and then to have that be part of his emotional vulnerability down the road, which would then, I think, make for greater Spider-Man stories. So that could be part of it. It could be. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV. Digital Spy here says, Spider-Man Far From Home, it's good news. FFH does a terrific job of balancing Avengers Endgame Fallout with a seriously fun and inventive Spidey adventure. Tom Holland continues to be perfect Spider-Man, with his chemistry with Zendaya is adorable. Bring on Phase 4. So what that kind of tells me is that the movie is going to eventually, it's going to end in a good way. It's going to have a good, happy ending, closing out Phase 3, opening up the door to Phase 4. Again, kind of like that end ultimate episode of Game of Thrones I talked about earlier. That's kind of how I view it. Jim Vejvoda here, or Vejvoda, sorry if I'm saying it wrong, from IGN says, Far From Home is an extremely fun, cleverly executed, and frequently hilarious culmination of the MCU's wall crawler's journey so far. Some very sweet moments, sly commentary, and deft action set pieces throughout. Just a reaction that's, okay. It says that they've done good under the MCU, so that's pretty good. Going on to say here, I liked it a tad more than Spider-Man Homecoming, which I loved. Far From Home is a great afterword for Endgame, closing out Phase 3 with a bang while also setting up new challenges and exciting stuff ahead. That's all I'm going to say until my review runs. Now, from what I heard, the end credit sequence is pretty amazing. That's what I've been told. So I really wonder if that has everything to do with it, if that's what's going to be setting things up, because they're currently in production on Black Widow, and that's it. As far as we know, I mean, they're shooting it right now. So that's what's coming out next May. That's the next MCU movie. So what exactly are they working on? I mean, we won't know until Comic-Con next month for certain, but by that time we'll have already seen this movie. Now, Cara Warner here from People says, Spider-Man Far From Home, what fun, solid sequel. Tom Holland is so incredibly charming. We'll watch him in any all things. Jake Gyllenhaal gets way more to do than expected. Clearly had a ball doing it. Also still loving Zendaya's MJ. And again, that's a point of contention, right? That's just, that's a, I don't know who made that call. That's kind of my biggest complaint with these movies is, again, nothing against her performance. It's just such a dumb thing to do. And that can have some negative impact on it. So, I mean, at least Jake Gyllenhaal gets a lot to do as a villain. We oftentimes get that with these Marvel movies, kind of a lackluster villain. Although I will say the way that they handled Vulture in the last movie was great, especially the scene where he figures out specifically who Peter Parker is. I thought that was well done. And also we got, his being a villain was understandable. So they did a lot to really kind of flesh that out. And it does feel like they kind of, they do more with that here. I would actually kind of hope that Kevin Feige would keep Josh Boone around, or at least who's writing these scripts, as a way to go, hey, you guys are really good at writing villains. Why don't you pitch us villains and help us write these ones for down the road? Because again, that's still Marvel's weakest thing. Anyway, Kate Erbland here from IndieWire says, a reaction tweet. Spider-Man Far From Home is a wonderful, it's funny, it's clever and filled with smart twists. It also made me have incredible visceral memories of class trips of yore. I didn't leave the theater sad. I'm not worried about superheroes' emotional states. Also, Zendaya. Okay, so my take on that one is it doesn't have an ending. Like, it's not Endgame sad, where you walk out feeling emotionally just right? But also, I think it also could potentially be a bit of a dig at Iron Man 3, where, Tony had PTSD from the events that happened in the first Avengers film. And here we could have Peter dealing with a lot of that as well, right? He blinked out of existence for 5 years, then was brought back only to enter into a massive battle where he watched his father figure die. And that was a thing. That was a thing. So, I mean, and clearly Zendaya was given a lot more to do this time around. Mike Ryan here from Uprocks says, absolutely love Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm a huge Mysterio fan and Gyllenhaal nails him. Also, the movie is very clever and funny how it handles Fallout post Endgame and explaining how the world works now. Going on to say, and obviously with Mysterio involved, there are some pretty bizarre scenes. Honestly, I've always kind of assumed a Mysterio movie wasn't really possible, but John Watts and company pulled it off. Oh, and for me, Spider-Man Far From Home has 3 legit holy crap moments. Geez, people keep guessing pretty dark things about this. Let me clarify. All 3 made me cheer, laugh, or wonder, wow, what happens now? And I guess that maybe leads into a bit with phase 4. That could also potentially lead in to just elements within the Spider-Man universe, because we know that there's Venom that runs parallel, right? And clearly they want to find a way to bring it in because there's a lot of money there. So that could be something, although I don't quite think they are thinking that far ahead right now. But then again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know if the breadcrumbs have in fact been laid or not. Brian Truitt here, he says, didn't love Spider-Man Homecoming as much as Spider-Man Far From Home as much as Homecoming, but it's still a rad take on bearing the weight of great expectations and a fun ode to teen romance. Tom Holland continues to be amazing. Zendaya's MJ is just as cool as Shuri, and Jake G's an inspired choice for Mysterio. Okay, so again, we keep kind of seeing that teen romance aspect. Obviously, they're playing that up. You know, it's, we are in your lap for the summer. Young love, huh? We won't talk about that again, but that's how I look at it. And it's kind of like how Mark Webb approached Amazing Spider-Man 1 and Amazing Spider-Man 2. The interpersonal scenes between Peter and Gwen were fantastic. That, of course, is what the entire movie was built around. Those entire 2 films were built around those scenes, and they worked really well, which is one of the reasons why the action kind of fell to the wayside, or the action wasn't as well received, or it was one of the things that was critical that people had, saying, look, these interpersonal scenes are kind of taking away from everything else, so how about you don't? And we'll just go from there. And it seems here like it doesn't. Like, it actually navigates that Peter Parker High School, young love, great power comes great responsibility aspect. And so I do find that to be a very fascinating take. And Jermaine Lucier here says, Spider-Man Far From Home made me smile from start to finish. It's got huge reveals, exciting set pieces, but the way it builds off Endgame to dive deeper into Peter's emotions is really what makes it soar. Mysterio also rules. I can't wait to see it again. And that's a pretty good take on it right there. That's just standard. It's like, look, it builds off of its previous films. It builds off of Endgame. It continues the story going. It's a lot of fun to see. And you know what? Here's the thing. That's actually probably all we want out of this movie, is just acknowledge the past, deal with the past, work through it in the present, prepare for the future, all while being a fun movie to watch. And you know what? I recently watched Homecoming again, and I loved Homecoming. And yeah, I'm getting more and more excited to see this one, even though Endgame left me so emotionally wrecked. I don't think we're going to see an emotionally wrecking Spider-Man film until Gwen Stacy comes into play, if at all. And then finally here, Ben Pearson from Slash Film says, B-C+. If you love the teen-centric stuff in Homecoming, there's more of that where that came from. Some of the comedy falls flat, but this film has a lot going on. Ultimately beneficial because it mostly distracts from stuff that doesn't land quite as well. Well, he goes on to say here, these Spider-Man movies have proven to be fascinating explorations of Tony Stark's legacy, complicating it in ways I didn't expect. That's another thing about this movie. It's doing an elaborate dance of leaning into and subverting expectations. Very curious to see how people will react. And I think that has a lot to do ultimately with just the fallout from Endgame. So when you're dealing with the death of Tony Stark, the man who started the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and his prodigal son, so to speak, is the one that is now the next story that we're told, dealing with that. So Peter's emotions are our emotions, right? That's the whole connectivity there, which I really love, actually. And so I think that by really kind of leaning into that, and leaning into the loss, leaning into the emotions that we're all feeling, it's not shying away from them. It's going through the 5 stages of grief. I mean, I'm probably overanalyzing it, but that's how I would approach it. Take us through those stages, so then we don't look back on it negatively when the next phase starts. And that actually is something that could effectively kill a franchise like this. If they don't address the death of a character in a meaningful enough way, and giving enough closure to it for the audience to truly move on, then they run the risk of destroying this over $20 billion legacy. And that is true. Like I said, coming off of Endgame, emotionally destroyed, emotionally wrecked, just totally. I was down for the next 24 hours. I told my girlfriend I ain't doing anything today. I'm not doing any videos. Can you take care? I'm just going to play video games. You got the kid. I just took the day off. I just was done. But if they're going to be addressing that and working through the same emotions I felt walking out of that film, that is masterful storytelling. That is how you establish a legacy, establish a long lasting legacy that is going to have so much undying loyalty that people will sit through 100 more Ant-Man and the Wasps. So I look forward to seeing what happens with this. I'm curious to know your thoughts, your opinions. How do you feel about these reactions? Does it make you more excited, less excited? Where do you stand? I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.